elliptical eyes you see in the Hollywood type stuff. And it just stands there, and I'm still not paralyzed, still not scared, not anything. And as of course, about a 4-year-old kid, when you see somebody standing there without any clothes, you tend to look them over pretty carefully. And I noticed that he didn't have a TT. I noticed he didn't have a belly button. As I went further up looking at him, he didn't have any mammary glands, any nipples. He didn't. He barely had a mouth. He didn't have any ears, and he had huge eyes and a large bulbous head, and he was pure white and skinny and tall compared to me. I couldn't figure out what in the world it was. And I wasn't afraid or anything. And at this point, I realize, of course, now that when these entities leave you, they normally leave you with what is called a screen memory, or literally a false memory of what really happened. They don't want you to remember. So he's realizing at this point he's made a mistake. Now he's got to come back and try to fix the little boy, make it like I had a bad dream or something so that I won't remember, or give me some nonsensical type imagery, like a 3-foot owl is a very common one with large black eyes. Well, what would a 3-foot owl be doing in your room with large black eyes? Well, that makes you think that it didn't happen. It was probably just a dream. The problem is I'm watching him, and he's got a problem now. Is he's got to fix the problem. Otherwise, I'm going to remember the event. So he realizes this, and his eyes move in some particular strange way. I'm not sure what it was all about, but at that exact instant, I became paralyzed, and a fear overcame me like I'd never known fear before, I guess, as a kid. And I have no idea what this was all about. I know now, after 38 years of investigations and over 1,000 cases worldwide, that he's transferring his fear to me. This is his own fear. Because these entities live in a world that you and I can barely grasp. And when he abducts someone and transfers his fear to them, and it causes a paralysis, which is a suggestion, by the way. And if you accept the suggestion, and most people do, you can't move, and then that fear transfers to you, and it's almost like a drug to him, because he doesn't experience fear now for the first time. Once he transfers it to you, he's free of his own fear. So that's how it all began with me in that little room, and just to give you a thumbnail.
And so, were you abducted multiple times? Well,
to finish up the last little part of this, he starts walking toward me, and at that point, I became afraid for my own fear, because I know what the thing was going to do to me at that point. And I pushed so hard against the wall, even though I was theoretically paralyzed, that it pushed my little bed apart from the wall, and my little arms and legs are wrapped in the covers now, and it wedged between the wall and the bed. The bed is pushed out in kind of a V from the wall, and I fall, that my head and little shoulders hit the floor, and now he can't get to me, which to me is great. I can't see him, but then I see it's the nightmare of all little kids. Something comes under your bed, lifts up the cover with that large bulbous head with those large black eyes, puts it right next to your face, and then tries to change his imagery. He didn't shape-shift, but he tried to change my thinking about what he was into that of a clown. Now, what's really interesting is that many abductees have clown phobias, and I have no idea where they got them.
But so kind of like the one from that Stephen King It movie.
Exactly.
I hated that clown.
Got it?
I hate that clown.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but he's a scary clown. After that movie, I didn't like clowns anymore, I swear to God.
That was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. But then I kept shaking my little head back and forth, no, because I wouldn't let him change my view of what I saw into what it is he wanted me to he wanted me to believe that I had a bad dream about a clown. Well, I didn't. I had no bad dream whatsoever. It was all real. And I wouldn't accept the suggestion. And many abductees and contactees don't know that you actually have some control over this thing. If you get past the fear, or get past I'm in the school of higher consciousness, or whatever whopper they want to tell you or promote toward you, you can actually take control over some of these things and get some kind of ability to change things. And that ended my last event, my first event. I had approximately 10 events that went on from 1952 to 1965, and for that period of 13 years, my abductions occurred about every year and a half. I would have another event, and then it finally ended in one final event when I was 17, and in that particular event, it was very violent and ended the most bizarre thing I've never even read of any events like that last event. And again, as a kid, I had no clue what was going on or why they were even doing what they were doing. I mean, what did I do to anybody? I'm just some innocent kid, just a little American boy doing, playing, just living just like anyone else. And so I had no clue what all this stuff was nor why they were doing what they were doing.
That must have been weird. So did your family know about what was going on? I mean, you see I'm trying to think like Whitley Strieber's Contact or Communication or whatever his book/movie was, and the rest of the family are like paralyzed in bed and they don't really know what's going on. I mean, did your family wake up, during parts of this thing and find you missing? Did you talk to your family about this? Or was it something that you ended up just carrying around by yourself for years and years and years?
This is something that most people who have experienced these things do not discuss with other people. My mother, who's 81 years old now, when she was 80, she said, "I saw you on TV the other night and on the History Channel or whatever it was." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I mean, I knew you did the investigations in the UFOs, but they said you were an abductee." "Well, that's just not true." And I said, "Well, actually it is, Mom."
Oops.
"Well, that's not possible." I said, "Yeah, it actually was." "When did it happen?" I said, "Well, when I was about 3.5 years old. We lived on in Midland, Texas." And she said, "You couldn't remember that when you were that little." I said, "You mean like our phone number?" And I gave it to her, and then I said, "Our address, 1005 South K Street, Midland, Texas." I said, "We had a well house out in the backyard, had a little old light on the outside of it, which gave a tiny bit of light into my little room." I said, that in itself, Mom," I said, made me able to see the entity because of that. So she was just floored by that whole thing. She said, "Well, why did you never tell me and JD, your dad?" And I said, "Actually, I did tell Daddy." I said about 20 years ago. And she said, "Well, he never told me." And I said, "I can imagine why." I said, "He called me into the back room and said to talk to my little brother, who was about 10 years old. And he says, 'Get in here and fix this boy.' I said, 'Something wrong with him.' I said, 'What's wrong with him?' He said, 'Well, he claims he's seeing these UFOs and these aliens and whatnot.' And I listened to my brother's story, and I looked at my dad, and I said, 'He's not lying.' He said, 'What do you mean?' I said, 'Well, first of all, I'm trained in detecting whether people are lying or telling the truth. My brother's not lying. That's number one.' I said, number two, what's more important than that is that I know he's not lying because his events are very, very similar to my own." And my daddy was just mortified. I said, "But he never told you, Mom, because he didn't want anybody else to know." This is the kind of stuff that can ruin your reputation.
So is it common or uncommon to have abduction histories follow along across a family or down a genetic line, as opposed to being totally random, like, "Oh, there's a guy with a nice shirt. Let's pick him up."
Very good. That's a really good question, Dr. Rita. The answer to your question is yes, yes, yes. They do follow genetic lines. They don't pick up everyone in the family. Sometimes they do, but that's pretty rare. Usually it's one person in the family. And but if you question other people in your family, like your aunts and uncles and grandma and grandpa, and question them carefully and very respectfully, alone, you'll often hear a story that'll just scare you half to death, because they've had some of the people in your family, in many of these cases, have had almost identical experiences to what you have and never told anyone.